I pushed the button. What do I say? Hey, welcome to another Hot Topic Tuesday, April 30th. We're officially then a third of the way through the year. Hopefully that means you're a third of the way to your annual goal for income. If not, we've got to make sure that we start doing the things that are necessary to be able to make that happen, right? Or that we have been doing that. Today, it's a little bit of what I've always referred to as TWIRE, which is short for This Week in Real Estate. So just some things have been coming up. A couple that have been held on a back burner. So we're going to hit all of those as we go through today. And if others pop up, don't be afraid to take yourself off mute. Let me know what that may be. But let's hit this first one, if it will allow me. So the question has come up, and I want you to think about this. Why would the question, what should I do with pricing in a home in today's market? And the best example is I'm looking at Danny here in the office. And Danny had one that she put on the market. What day of the week? A Friday. Held it open on Saturday, the next day. Held it open the next day and had 200 people walk through the open house. Now, nice home, Rochester, priced, what was it priced at? $475, had 200 people come through it, had 17 offers, 18 offers now officially, 18 offers that have come through on it. Obviously, it's sold, and guess what? Sold for way over the asking price. These are circumstances that we have to take a look at. And so I'm going to go back to other markets we've had, and I've had agents come to me and saying that, well, I didn't get this listing because everybody else was overpricing it. Have you heard that one, used that one, lost that one? I think I just want to point out that with the market that we're in, again, historically low inventory, more buyers have come out in the last couple of months. Therefore, we have competing offers. But what does that type of recipe add up to? An increasing market. So if you've used comparables from even 3 months ago, you've got to adjust, because if it sold for $300,000, how much more might you have to add? $20,000? $30,000? I mean, I want to point that out because there's, as I would put it to you, there is no right answer. But you do have to take it into consideration and know that we can list something higher now than something that sold back in November or December. All right, let's hit the next one. This is one where people are going, well, Darwin, and it deals with the aspect of the buyers. And I'll tell you, it's what I believe more of what we're concerned about than what we're actually running into. But with the requirements due to the settlements, one of the things that we're worried about is a buyer saying, well, I'll just go straight to the listing agent. There's just one thing to think about, and you can throw this to someone. The 3 most stressful things in life are death, divorce, and moving. By the way, statistically, it's been proven that 100% of people have died somewhere in their life. Yeah, that was to be funny. So somebody laughed for me out there anyway. Thank you. Thank you. So here's the thing. You wouldn't try to bury yourself. Of course, that's not even capable. See, bad jokes really do work. They call dad jokes. You wouldn't handle your own nasty divorce, right? I mean, can they? Yes. Is it the best thing? No. Most of the horror stories coming out of a divorce is when somebody was not represented. And so why would you then handle the purchase of a home without being represented? Sometimes we just got to ask a very logical question to get people to see the light. Okay. So it was just one of those that came up recently. It was keep it simple. And that's what we're running into. Now, along with the settlement and how things are going, if you're doing business, now, if you're not, what I'm going to tell you is just know what I'm saying is true. If you're doing business, then you'll know what I'm saying is true. I've been asking agents, how much trouble have you had getting somebody to pay a full commission to where we can compensate a buyer's agent since the first of the year? Anybody had any trouble? Or even if we go since the announcement of the NAR settlement, does anybody really, really had any trouble? I'm not saying you didn't run into it. I'm not saying you didn't get a question about it, but did you have trouble? Because I haven't heard anybody coming up with a seller yet, their own personal seller, saying, I don't want to compensate a buyer's agent. I'll pay you 3% and that's it. Well, listen, take the listing and we'll deal with it. But what I've been hearing from agents, they haven't had any trouble. Sitting down with a buyer, have we had any trouble with the buyer signing the contract? Because we've had the contract in place since the first of the year with buyer agency. What changes when the settlement goes through? And I think we keep moving forward as if it will be approved. It hasn't been required yet. So the only reason that we wouldn't be hearing anything yet is because we haven't begun moving forward. I know many of you have, especially I'm hearing the producers are actually going, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we need to do this. Even though it's not required yet, move into it now. So bottom line, I got to tell you, I don't think the John Q public out there is going to have any issue signing the contract even once it's required. So that's a key that I want you to think about. If we're not having troubles now, it's pretty much one of just a couple of things. We're not doing any business, so we wouldn't run into it. 2, it's just not a problem because everything is the same. Or 3, you haven't asked for it up front and you're still getting it signed at the time of an offer. In which case, we've got to break away from that and get these things signed up front. So that's that part of it. I'm not seeing any questions pop up here. So here is another one that came up in regards to the question. What do I do with people who want to go look for a home? I just want to go see it, or they visit an open house. How do I handle it with what we've been given? Well, guys, keep track of what NAR is putting out there. They got frequently asked questions, and recently they put this one in there because what we know is it says working with any agent working with a buyer through the MLS. So I'm just going to read this. The working with language is intended to distinguish MLS participants who provide brokerage services to a buyer, such as identifying potential properties, arranging for the buyer to tour property, performing or facilitating negotiations on behalf of the buyer, presenting offers by the buyer, or other services for the buyer from MLS participants who simply market themselves or just to talk to a buyer, like at an open house, or by providing an unrepresented buyer access to a house they have listed. Now, again, this is on the frequently asked questions. You got to do a screenshot of this, do a screenshot of this. It's actually very, very simple. If the MLS participant is working only as an agent or a sub-agent of the seller, which we don't allow, we prefer not to do, then the buyer is not, then let me rephrase that, then the participant is not working with the buyer. Somebody walks into an open house, says, "Hi, I'd like to see the house. Do you represent the buyer? Are you working with the buyer at that point?" The answer is no. You are not working with the buyer. But Darwin, what if it's not my listing and I'm not representing the seller? Well, let me ask you again. When they walk in the door, are you working with the buyer in touring homes? No, they came to the open house. It's really easy if it's your house that you have listed, because then you represent the seller. So it says if the MLS participant is working only as an agent or subagent of the seller, then the participant is not working with the buyer. In that scenario, an agreement is not required because the participant is performing work for the seller and not the buyer. Authorized dual agents, on the other hand, work with the buyer and the seller. Well, at what point are you working with the buyer? I hope that makes sense. Oh, and here's the other one. Somebody calls you up because you took a floor call. Somebody called you directly from the internet on your listing. They said, "I'd like to see this home." We know that where we want to move to is to capture the buyer and get them under contract. We need to have a signed agreement, but are you working with the buyer at that point? The answer is no. So if I will go show the buyer, at some point, I'm going to want the interview to represent the buyer. I want to set an appointment for the interview. And again, coming up, matter of fact, tomorrow at our Macomb office, we are doing a one-day buyer boot camp, 10 to 4. It's going to be at 5 other locations. So make sure you check it out and get that signed, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about. How do we do business in the future with buyers? Guys, it really shouldn't change much, but it's important that you have process, tools, system in place to be able to make it work. So the other question that's come up is, what does it mean to tour a home? In the NAR Q&A, written buyer's agreement are required before a buyer tours a home for sale or listed on the MLS. Touring a home means the buyer and or the MLS participant or other agent, at the direction of the MLS participant, working with the buyer, so we defined that on the previous one, enters the house. This includes when the MLS participant or other agent, at the direction of the MLS participant working with the buyer, enters the home to provide a live virtual tour, to be a buyer not physically present. Now, I don't think that happens a lot around where we are, but in that event, we still need to have that. A home means, and this is important, residential property consisting of not less than 1 nor more than 4 units. So that is consistent even with lead-based paint, because lead-based paint says 1 to 4 family residential unit. Okay? So that should put your mind at ease if you've had that question of what do I do when they won't meet me for a job interview to represent them as a buyer. And I have to go show the property. Based on what I'm reading from these definitions, these questions, and the answers, go do it. But why am I going to show the property? To build enough rapport, to earn the right to do a buyer interview, and ask them to then sign an agreement. Obviously, agency disclosure would come along with that. I must be doing a really great job because nobody has any questions. Go ahead, Danny.
But so after, when everything comes into play, will we be required to, let's say somebody calls up, they want to see a home, then why wouldn't we just do a 1 day?
Ah. So Danny was saying, what happens in the situation where somebody says, well, I just want to see this one home. Why wouldn't we do like a 1 day buyer agency agreement? Could do that. Could do that. Is it necessary right up front based on what this is saying? No. Because we're not working with them yet.
You're getting personal information from them.
Well, so Danny is saying that, yeah, but what about the personal information we're gaining? Guys, that's disclosure of agency. And that does happen. So it's just one of the things that we've been discussing is agency disclosure. By law, it says that we must disclose in writing prior to the exchange of any confidential information. Now, this is a self-introspective look, but when have you been doing agency disclosure? Now, I don't want anybody to confess this, right? We all know when we've done it. So you had a floor call come in, and in handling that floor call, I asked, have you ever asked questions and gained confidential information? Yep, sure did. How about an open house? Yes, we did. Yeah, but Darwin, I actually, when they walked in, I said, hi, my name is, and I represent the seller today. Great. At what point did you have that person sign the agency disclosure? Because it says that it would be done in writing. So there's what the law or these guidelines that they're going to be up front say that we must do. But in the end, we have to deal with reality. Because could you imagine if we actually by law did an open house and said, hi, before you speak a word, I need you to know my name is Darwin. I represent the sellers today. And the state requires that you sign this piece of paper stating that I've told you. We've never done that. Yet, that's what the law basically says. Because do we know when they're going to say something that is confidential? So I'm not going to say don't worry about it, but when should we be disclosing and when should we be getting these agency agreements signed? As soon as possible. But we know what it says in writing when we must. Okay? And I still don't see any questions out here on Zoom land, so we're going to keep right on moving. Let's talk about escalation clauses and appraisal guarantees, because obviously with the market as it is, with low inventory, buyers are still out there. We have a lot of competition. A lot of competition. You have high demand, low supply, increasing prices, and of course we have competing offers. Now what we all know is that we end up with these things called escalation clauses. So let me pull up. Guys, I'm going to be in Remind, but it's essentially all going to look the same, and we're going to get past that top portion so nobody hates me. Here's a simple appraisal guarantee. Now, these are clauses for those of you that are with us today. These clauses are, in most, and I'm not going to guarantee because I don't get access to all of our MLSs, but these clauses, or if you're part of MI Real Source as an example, they're called clauses. Well, they're clauses in both actually.
Yes.
But you can add them into most of these and addendum because they're quite wordy. All right. So here's what I want you to know. Let's take a look at this first one. And what we're seeing is this offer is contingent upon the home appraising at or above the purchase price. Now, by the way, the purchase agreement already states that. This is kind of when you have a buyer or we want to highlight that it's contingent upon. This is a make the buyer comfortable. Is it a good idea necessarily in this market? No, but I want to show you something. If all we ever did was to put that in there, have we answered the what if? What happens if it doesn't appraise? So it's contingent upon it, but what if it doesn't appraise? This actually addresses that in the event the home does not meet or exceed the purchase price. And satisfactory terms could not be negotiated. Otherwise, seller get together, can't negotiate anything better. Buyer may, at their sole discretion, terminate this agreement and return the earnest money deposit in full. They will get their earnest money deposit. I just wanted to highlight that one simple one because buyers are a little fearful sometimes when they offer higher. Good idea in this market? Well, your offer may not even get accepted. But let's go to this one. So this is an escalation clause. If I'm looking at the right one, there's two. Escalation clause with the appraisal guarantee and an escalation clause without. Now, we need to guide our buyers in what these are. We have to tell them that it's not necessarily that we recommended this, but it is an option, that they're at risk. They may be paying more than what a property may appraise for. Yeah, on and on and on, right? But what I want you to do is as you look at this, I want you to see the detail. Don't write your own escalation clause. You are leaving yourself, the broker, the other agent, the buyer, the seller. You're just asking for trouble. There is detail that needs to be covered, and that is what is in here. If you're not familiar with the escalation clause, it's simply saying that, seller, if you receive any other non-contingent offer, will increase the price to what they offered plus X amount of money. So it may be that we'll beat that offer by $5,000. Obviously, the more expensive the property is, the more they're asking, the more that you should be exceeding it. 1,000 may be good on something that's 200,000, maybe, but 1,000 on something that's 800, probably not going to do it. Okay, so it'd have to make it worthwhile. The other is that it won't exceed a certain amount. So we'll beat it by up to a certain amount. It then addresses that if the lender's appraisal is less than the agreed sales price, the purchaser agrees to proceed to settlement and pay up to blank difference. So there's just the aspect of we're going to buy it, and this is the way the two are written. We're going to buy it. Doesn't matter what it appraises for. You have another one where you can put it into the addendum, and you are saying it doesn't matter. So one says it matters what it appraises for. The other is I'm buying it. It doesn't matter. Both of them are in there, and they have to have the capability. So if you make an offer with an escalation clause, then here's what I want you to remember. You should be getting or giving, depending upon which side you're on, confirmation that they're capable of actually doing what they've offered. Does that make sense? Everybody here is nodding their head. Make sure that they're capable of doing what they've offered. So if they're saying, hey, we'll do an escalation clause with a appraisal guarantee, and then on top of it, they remove the limit, make sure they're capable of doing said. All right. And guys, that's what I got for you today. So let me see if there's any questions. I just say take yourself off of mute if you got any other questions about what's going on. Yes, Nancy, great one. Proof of funds. Proof of funds would be one of the key things, especially if you're doing appraisal guarantee. Matter of fact, Nancy, you brought up a great point. Why do we ask for proof of funds when you turn in a transaction? Anybody know? Protect yourself. Protect your seller. So if I get an offer from Logan here and Logan makes me a cash offer, do I know that his buyer actually has the cash? No, anybody can make a cash offer. And here's the common one that people will do. Well, I've got cash in my 401k. And I know I'm not the only one that's been burned by this. Yes, they had everything that they needed in the 401k that they could pull it out, except for the rules of that 401k would only allow them to pull 50%. It's no longer cash. How about this one? Well, it's cash, but it's subject to them selling and closing their house. Well, then it's not cash. That's a contingent offer. They don't have the cash. See, if we make a cash offer, they're buying a house outside of any contingencies. So yes, it's cash if they get their home sold and closed. Not the same. There is that contingency. So that's one of them. But so gang, why do we ask for it? To protect our clients, to protect ourselves. Doesn't matter if it's seller or the buyer. Whichever side that you're taking care of, it's to make sure that we're not wasting any time, that we're not wasting any of their time, and that we're not going to run into any problems. So yes, I'm paying cash. Great. We'll need the proof of funds so I can submit that with the offer. Do I want to submit the offer without the proof of funds? No. So now I'm on the other side of it and I'm the listing agent. You make a cash offer, I'm going to get excited. Especially if it's 18 offers, I would almost expect it to be. But would I question the offer if the proof of funds was not accompanying the offer? Yes, especially when there's multiple offers. You could have lost, if that buyer doesn't have the funds, you could have lost that buyer. Another buyer, if you lose that buyer, you may have lost another one that actually had funds. Okay? Get the verification. Don't get it afterward because that's a requirement to turn in a package. The reason it's on there is to cover yourself, cover the brokers, cover the clients, everybody involved, so we don't have any future problems. And yeah, one of the things Nancy put into the chat is that you could go out and get a HELOC, and there's other opportunities, which would bring up this one. You're not the financial expert. You're the marketing expert. You're the one who's supposed to know everything that they need to know to help them get into a new home. Make sure you're working with a mortgage partner who knows what all of the possibilities would be. Work with someone who could go, well, you know, we could do this. At least it's offer the option. All right. So that's a very good one. All right. Any other thoughts, questions come out this week in real estate? Valerie put here, had a buyer pull out of a multiple offer situation because I kept insisting on proof of funds to cover the appraisal guarantee. Well, that pretty much says, yeah, we're guilty. I love it. Thank you for throwing that out, Valerie, because there's the importance. If they won't provide it prior to, and look, give us a statement from an account. And by the way, we should always blank out the account numbers, right? Anytime we send over something that's verification, even in earnest money deposit, we cross out the account number. But as long as it gives verification of the bank and the cash being in that account, that it's liquid, that's good. We'll take one from a representative of the bank on the bank letterhead that says, gee, Mr. I don't know, Luigi has got all the money he needs in the bank to be able to purchase a home for. Great. It's proof of funds. It's better than absolutely getting nothing. And again, Valerie's situation that she pointed out is an awesome reason why we need to do that. They'll pull out because they didn't want to provide it. Probably pulled out because they couldn't provide it. So good one. Well, guys, with that, we're 12:30 on the nose. And I'm always Mr. Timely. At least I try to be to get started. Remember, we're a third of the way through the year. You should be a third of the way into your company or into your goals for the year for your income. Remember that we've got these 6 locations, first one tomorrow in Macomb. If you want to attend the buyer boot camp, the one-day buyer boot camp, 10 to 4, tomorrow Macomb, just call the Macomb office, talk with Irione. She'll get your name down on it. We'll also be at coming up. We've got Fenton, Lapeer, Troy, Midland, and Livonia. So get into that. We're going to talk about all the things about how do I even get the appointment to do the job interview. More importantly, how do I get them to sign the contract and want to pay me a full commission, if not even more? And I will drop that thought out to you. So have a great one, you guys. It's been wonderful weather. Don't let that keep you away from going out and doing business. See you next week.